How are you guys doing? Today is Sunday, March 27th, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do a GOAT profile, a greatest of all time profile for Manuel Neuer. The GOATed German goalkeeper for the Bayern Munich soccer club turns 36 today. And what I'm going to do with this episode is, of course, I'm going to look and analyze what Manuel Neuer's career has been ever since he stepped foot on the big circuit as a teenager, by the way, or as a young 20-year-old, and looked at where his trajectory has gotten him while he's played in the German league for every single year that he's been playing soccer, which is 16 seasons. He's played for the international team as well, and not to mention he's playing for Germany's best team right now. And really, when you take a step back, you can see how he's been able to impact the game on a micro level, in addition to on a micro level with game in, game out, season in, season out performances. But of course, I'm going to lay out the entirety of Manuel Neuer's career as it leads up until now. Even right now, Bayern Munich looks like they could do a lot of damage this year, and he could do a lot more in his career. But I'm going to take the time now to take a look at what he's been able to do so far, as Manuel Neuer is regarded as one of the greatest soccer players, not even goalies, to ever play. And he's already passing longevity numbers in Bayern Munich and in Germany numbers. So he's really kind of in that stage. If you're not familiar with Manuel Neuer, I guess he stands in about 6'4", and he's probably regarded as the best goalie of his time. He's very big, he has a very big, tall, long body, which of course helps him guard a limited size goal area. But at the same time, I think he just has the mentality that he knows that he just ruins strikers and forwards' dreams by simply existing. He has incredible reaction times, and he's just a very smart goalie that you can see has really truly studied the game and is taking very good care of his body until he's no longer the captain of the German soccer team. And of course, just even taking a look at how long he's been playing for the Bayern Munich soccer club since 2011-2012. He was playing for the German national team for even longer, as he joined the German national team itself in 2009. Not to mention that he was also named the captain not long ago, right before the 2018 World Cup. But nonetheless, I'm going to get into his career. Originally from Gelsenkirchen in West Germany, which is a conglomeration of a bunch of Western German cities together in one area. He would find his way making it out of the youth system at Schalke after he played at Schalke for about 14 seasons on the youth club. He would find himself playing for the actual Schalke team as a first-team goalkeeper in his age 20 season in 2006-2007. As within that season, he would go on to start all 27 of the Bundesliga matches he played in a season where Schalke would finish as runners-up in the Bundesliga after finishing fourth the year before. Within that Bundesliga season, Neuer would go on to allow 21 goals in the 27 matches he played, which is incredible. He would have a double-digit amount of clean sheets as a 20-year-old at the German level, which would give you a quick idea of the impact that he had at such a young age. Even if you were to just drop him in today's league, if you saw a 20-year-old just being dropped on the second best team in Germany and be a big part of the reason they do so, many people would start to turn their heads and start to wonder why this team is that good. This would transition into Neuer's, in addition to that, Schalke would end up losing in the second round of the Pokal. And they would go on to, really go as far as they really could, as they ended up losing in the first round of the UEFA Cup too. However, this would transition into Neuer's second full season with the Schalke club. In his age 21 season in 2007-2008, he will go on to start all 34 of the matches that he played in a season where Schalke would finish third in Germany, which still is a very tough feat to even try to pull off. But he would go on to finish with allowing 32 goals in those 34 matches he played, less goals than matches played for the second year in a row. In his first 2 years in the Bundesliga, he would also finish with 12 clean sheets on the season, as of course Schalke was still trying to figure out where they were. They would go on to be finalists in the DFL Liga Pokal, as they would go all the way to the final and lose to Bayern in that game, as Neuer was, of course, the goalie. But, of course, as a young German goalie, he was really kind of proving himself. And it would be after his third season that he finally got called up to the German national team. His third season with the team would be his age 22 season in 2008-2009. In the Bundesliga, he would start all 27 of the games he played in a season where FC Schalke would finish 8th in the Bundesliga after finishing 3rd the year before. This season, they would get the furthest that they would in Pokal, further than the other two rounds, as they would actually get knocked out in the quarterfinals. They lost to Mainz in this round, but Neuer would go on to allow 25 goals in the 27 Bundesliga matches he played. The third Bundesliga season he would start his career with, where he had less goals allowed than actual matches played. He'd also finish with a double-digit amount of clean sheets, as he would finish with 11 clean sheets on the season, to give you an idea of how well he was playing. At the end of his 2009 season, he would go on to be called up for the senior German squad for the very first time in his career, as he would play his very first matchup in a game versus the UAE all the way back in 2009. Come back to mention that he's one of the most tenured German soccer players ever, but that was the very beginning. But following this third season, he, of course, proved that he was a very capable player and very possibly the future of the goalkeeping position in Germany. This would transition into his fourth season at Schalke, the season that would, of course, raise him up into the upper echelon of German soccer players. In his third season, his age 23 season in 2009-2010, Manuel Neuer would start all 34 of the games he played in a season where Schalke would finish as runners-up for the second time in at least his first 4 years there. In the Bundesliga itself, he would go on to allow 31 goals. This would be the fourth year in a row to start his career where he's had less goals allowed than matches played. He would also go on to finish with 15 clean sheets, the first time that he would have at least 15 in a season, and it would continue his 4-year streak to start his career of seasons in the Bundesliga with a double-digit amount of clean sheets. Following that 2009-2010 season, which saw Schalke finish as runners-up, and which also saw them lose in the semifinals of the DFB Pokal. This time they lost to Bayern Munich. Manuel Neuer would play for the German national team in the 2010 World Cup. The original goalkeeper was starting ahead of him, but he would eventually get moved up to the second-choice goalkeeper after Robert Enke died tragically. But he would go on to become the starting goalie after Rene Adler, the then starting goalie, would suffer a serious rib injury. So going into the World Cup as a 24-year-old, Manuel Neuer would go on to compete in his very first international tournament for Bayern, as he would compete with Germany at the 2010 World Cup, where Germany would go on to finish in third place. And while at the same time, Manuel Neuer would officially be named the goalkeeper of the tournament in his very first international appearance. Once they made it to the knockout stage, I guess looking at how Germany would make it through their group stage, they would go on to win their first group stage play in game against. They won their first matchup against Australia. They would lose their second matchup against Serbia 1-0, but then beat Ghana 1-0 to make it into the knockouts. Once they made it into the round of 16, Germany would go on to beat England 4-1, as Thomas Müller, Neuer's eventual teammate, would score 2 goals in that game. In the quarterfinals, Germany would beat Argentina 4-0, as Manuel Neuer was able to keep a clean sheet against Lionel Messi and a very solid Argentinian team. In the semifinals, Germany would actually lose 1-0 to Spain, but once they made it to the playoff, Germany would beat Uruguay 3-2, as they would go on to take home the bronze medal in the World Cup this year. This would be after they were third place all the way back in 2006, but that would be Manuel Neuer's very first appearance. And after being the best goalkeeper in the World Cup, many people started to be aware of Manuel Neuer's presence in the world of soccer. This, of course, would lead to Manuel Neuer's 5th and final season at Schalke, which will probably go down as one of his worst statistical seasons. In his age 24 season following the World Cup in 2010-2011, he would start all 34 Bundesliga games in a season where Schalke would finish 14th in the entire Bundesliga. This would be the first time since 2000 that Schalke would drop out of the top 10 in Germany. However, first looking at that season itself, Manuel Neuer would go on to allow 44 goals in the 34 matches he started. He still would go on to finish with 11 clean sheets, making it a 5-season stretch that he would finish with a double-digit amount of clean sheets. And also in that 2010-2011 season, following his World Cup debut, he would go on to compete in 6 matches in a DFB Pokal run that would see Schalke win it for the first time since 2002. Once they would make it to the final, they would go on to beat Duisburg 5-0 in the final, as of course they would beat Bayern Munich 1-0 in the semis, as Manuel Neuer was able to hold a clean sheet in both of those matchups for Schalke to actually make it. He would go on to pick up his only trophy that he would win with Schalke. Not to mention that also in this year, after qualifying for Champions League, they would make it all the way to Champions League semifinals, so they would end up losing to Manchester United. And then taking a look at how they would fare in the German Super Cup, they would end up losing in the final 2-0 to Bayern. So even though they finished outside of the top 10 within the Bundesliga, Manuel Neuer was a big part of the reason that Schalke was competing in these other competitions. In the Pokal, he only allowed 3 goals in the 6 matches he played, as he had 4 clean sheets. Very similar to what he was doing with the World Cup. And then in Champions League, in the 12 matches he played, he allowed 13 goals. That would be his first Champions League appearance, as he had 3 clean sheets for a Schalke team that couldn't even make it out of the top 10. Following his 5 seasons in Schalke, he, of course, would be picked up by the best German team, as of course, they were ready to take him on. But when Manuel Neuer, who is now the Bayern Munich captain and the most tenured Bayern Munich player ever, once he first signed for Bayern Munich, of course, the fans weren't the biggest fan of him because, of course, he was one of the best goalies in all of Germany. It took some time for the Bayern Munich fans to get used to him, but he would go on to join Bayern Munich in 2011, and right now he is in his 11th season playing with the Bayern Munich club. In his very first season with Bayern Munich, in his age 25 season in 2011-2012, he would start all 33 Bundesliga games in a season where Bayern Munich would finish as runners-up in the Bundesliga to Borussia Dortmund. They would also finish as runners-up in the Pokal, not to mention that they would also finish as runners-up in the Champions League as well. In the Bundesliga, they would fall second to Borussia Dortmund, who ended up finishing about 8 seconds ahead of them. Or 8 points, ahead of them. But in that Bundesliga season, Manuel Neuer would allow 22 goals in the 33 matchups he played, which is probably his best ratio that he would have in the Bundesliga up until that point. He would also go on to finish with 17 clean sheets, which is the most clean sheets he would have in a season, as he would have a clean sheet in a majority of games in the Bundesliga for the very first time in his career. Taking a look at how Bayern Munich would fare in the Pokal, they would actually end up losing in the Pokal final to Borussia Dortmund. But even in that path all the way up to there, he would play 5 matches and he allowed 6 goals, with the majority of the goals he allowed being in the final. And not to mention in the Champions League run, he would play 14 matches for a Bayern Munich team. That would make it all the way to the final just to lose on penalties to Chelsea. So it was a very heartbreaking season, his very first season there. As in his very first season in Munich, they were unable to come away with a trophy. But at the end of the day, they would still be a very solid team for the year. Not to mention that looking at how they fared in the German Super Cup, they would just come up just short. But that would be Manuel Neuer's first season. After his first season playing with Bayern in 2011-2012, he would compete with Germany in the Euros for the very first time. And while competing with Germany in the Euros in 2012, as this Euros would be played in Poland and in Ukraine, they would go on to make it out of their group, as they had to face off against Portugal, Denmark, and the Netherlands. They would end up beating Portugal 1-0 off of a Neuer clean sheet. They beat Germany 2-0 in the second group stage, and they beat the Netherlands 2-1 in the second stage before beating Denmark 2-1. Once they made it into the knockout stage, they would go on to beat Greece 4-2 in the quarterfinal. In the semifinal, they would actually lose 2-1 to Italy. That's how they would get knocked out of that bracket. as they finished as semifinalists. But following that, Manuel Neuer would come back to Bayern Munich for his second season there. In his seventh season in the Bundesliga, in his age 26 season in 2012-2013, Manuel Neuer would start all 31 of the Bundesliga matches he played for a Bayern Munich team that would go on to win the Bundesliga that year, as they would actually go on to win the treble after finishing runners-up in virtually every single category. Within the Bundesliga itself, they, of course, would go on to finish over second place Borussia Dortmund by over 25 points. In the Bundesliga season itself, in his very first Bundesliga championship season, Neuer would allow 18 goals in the 31 matches he played. He had 18 clean sheets, which of course would top his career high at the point. And that would be a second straight season where the majority of the games he played, he finished with a clean sheet, specifically within the Bundesliga. Looking at how he fared in the DFB Pokal in the German domestic cup, they would go on to beat VfB Stuttgart 3-2 in the end. This would be the second time that Manuel Neuer had won the Pokal, the first time that he had done so with Bayern. Even in that DFB Pokal season, he only allowed 3 goals in the 5 matches he played. In his very first German Super Cup, he would go on to allow 1 goal as Bayern ended up beating Borussia Dortmund 2-1 to pick up that trophy. And then, not to mention that Bayern Munich would go all the way on to Champions League. Once they made it to Champions League, they will go on to win it as they beat Borussia Dortmund 2-1 in the final. In that Champions League run, Manuel Neuer would allow 9 goals in the 13 matches he played as he finished with 5 clean sheets. So by the time he had won his very first Champions League, it took him, that was also the first season that he would go on to win the Bundesliga, a title that he's won so many times. It was the first time he won the Pokal with Bayern, the second time that he had won it as the goalie. So he was slowly, surely becoming, if not by that point, a superhero within the confines of Germany. But this would be his second season for Germany. They were already continental champs. After they went on to win the UEFA Super Cup and then the FIFA Club World Cup, they would go on to Manuel Neuer would return for his third season in Bayern. His third season in his age 27 season in 2013-14 would see him start 31 games yet again for a Bayern Munich team that would win the Bundesliga. This is the second year in a row that they would win. They're actually keeping this record going on till today, but specifically within that Bundesliga season in the second year in a row winning. He would allow 18 goals in the 31 games he played. For the second year in a row, by the way, he was doing a very impressive job of doing that. Also within that season, he would go on to finish with 15 clean sheets, making it the 4th season in a 5-year stretch that he finished with at least 15 clean sheets in a full Bundesliga season, going back to his first World Cup season when he was playing for Schalke. So that is to give you a sense of where we are right now in the midst of his peak. That's how he fared in the Bundesliga. In the DFB Pokal, he would go on to start 5 matches and only allow 1 goal, as he would go on to finish with 4 clean sheets. Bayern Munich would go on to win the DFB Pokal this season as well. As specifically within the Pokal, they would go on to beat Borussia Dortmund in the final to win this title for a second year in a row. That would be the third time that Neuer had won it, as he had won it in Schalke too. And then he will go on to play 12 games in a Champions League run. That would see Bayern Munich finish in the semifinal round as they lost to Real Madrid 5-0 on aggregates. Probably one of Neuer's probably one of the series in the Champions League that Neuer most wants to forget. But regardless, within those Champions League matchups, he did finish with 4 clean sheets. But following that season where he would help Bayern Munich win the Bundesliga and the DFB Pokal, and a year removed from the Champions League, Manuel Neuer would essentially rise to the echelon of the all-time greats who have ever played soccer in this world after he took Germany to the FIFA World Cup and helped them win eventually win the tournament, while being named as the best goalkeeper for the second straight World Cup that he was playing in. Taking a look at how Germany would fare specifically within this World Cup, they would be placed within the same group as United States, Portugal, and Ghana. They would win their first match. They won their first group stage matchup 4-0 versus Portugal, as Manuel Neuer got a clean sheet in that game. Their second game would be a 2-2 draw versus Ghana, and then their third match would be a 1-0 clean sheet versus the United States. Once they made it into the knockout stages, Germany would beat Algeria in the round of 16 2-1 in extra time. Once they made it to the quarterfinals, Germany would beat France 1-0 off of a clean sheet, thanks to their 13th minute goal from Mats Hummels. In the semifinals, Germany would go on to beat the host country Brazil 7-1, as that would be one of the most memorable soccer games to have ever been played. And then once Germany made it to the final, Germany would go on to beat Argentina 1-0 in extra time, thanks to Mario Götze's 113th minute goal. In the entirety, Manuel Neuer would play 7 games in the World Cup that year. He would allow 2 goals over the entirety of the tournament, as he finished with 4 clean sheets. With this win, of course, Manuel Neuer would give Germany its very first World Cup as a nation since 1990. It would be Germany's 4th World Cup that they've actually won, so it would be a very historic title for them, because you only get a stab at it every 4 years. And considering Manuel Neuer, even by then, was arguably, if not inarguably, the top goalie in the world, he was a very big part of them doing this. Not to mention that he also just came off of back-to-back Bundesliga and Pokal seasons with Germany. So he was, at that point, regarded as one of the greatest German soccer players to ever play, and he was still in the midst of his prime. Following his World Cup win, and that's also the last time that Germany has won an international contest or an international tournament with Manuel Neuer at the helm. This, of course, would lead to Bayern's 4th season, or to Manuel Neuer's 4th season with Bayern in his age 28 season, his 9th season in the Bundesliga in 2014-15. He would start 31 of the 32 Bundesliga matches he played in a season where Bayern would finish as the Bundesliga champs for the 3rd year in a row. In this season, he would go on to finish with 18 clean sheets in the 31 matches he started. Or he said he had 18 goals allowed in the 32 matches he played, as he had 20 clean sheets. This would be his very first season where he would log 20 clean sheets. It would be the 4th season in a row since he had joined Bayern that he had at least 15 clean sheets in a Bundesliga season. It would be the 5th season in a 6-year stretch that he would finish with at least 15. So, of course, Manuel Neuer still in the heat of his prime. That would be the only title that Bayern would actually claim that year. Bayern would actually lose in the semifinal of the in the DFB Pokal in the German Cup, as the team that they would actually end up losing to would be Borussia Dortmund in extra time. And then once Bayern Munich would make it to Champions League, Bayern Munich would make it all the way to Champions League, and once they made it to Champions League, they would actually lose in the semifinals to Barcelona, the team that would actually go on and win the title that year. So that's how 2014-15 would end. And then, of course, Manuel Neuer, in the midst of all this, was able to finish with 11 goals allowed in the 12 Champions League matches he played, even though they got thrashed by Barcelona. He would finish with 6 clean sheets in the 12 Champions League matches. Even as they finished in the semifinals of the DFB Pokal, he allowed 3 goals in the 5 matches he played. Not to mention also that Bayern would also play in the German Super Cup and in the DFL Super Cup. Bayern Munich would be the team that would go on to lose to Borussia Dortmund. They lost 2-0 in this matchup. But they were still able to take home the Bundesliga title. But of course, this would transition into what would be Manuel Neuer's 5th season with the club. In his age 29 season with the team in 2015-16, he would go on to start all 34 Bundesliga games for the first time that he has done so with Bayern, in a season where Bayern would win the Bundesliga title for the 4th year in a row. In the Bundesliga specifically, he would go on to allow 16 goals in the 34 matches he played. He had 20 clean sheets for the 2nd year in a row. This would be the 5th year in a row and the 6th year in a 7-year stretch that he finished with at least 15 clean sheets. And this, of course, would make it so that the first decade of his career in the Bundesliga would see him finish with a double-digit amount of clean sheets in every single season that he played in Germany. And, of course, like I said, he did all this while finishing with a double-digit amount of clean sheets. So Manuel Neuer still at the height of his powers. Not to mention in 2015-16 as well, Bayern Munich would go on to win the DFB Pokal for the third time since Neuer had joined the team. He would go on to play 5 Pokal games as he allowed no goals, and he would finish with 6 full clean sheets on the season. Taking a look at how Bayern Munich would fare specifically in the Pokal, they would end up winning the final game of the Pokal as they won their game against Borussia Dortmund on penalties in order to make it through. And of course, considering it was penalties, Manuel Neuer had to come up big for them to win this trophy. Bayern Munich would end up losing to Wolfsburg in the DFL Super Cup that year. Not to mention that they would also go on to lose in Champions League in the semifinal to Atletico Madrid off of away goals. So that is how their 2015-16 season would end. But still, Manuel Neuer would be competing at the top of his game, as even within that Champions League season, he would allow 10 goals in the 11 matches he played. He finished with 4 clean sheets. In 2016, that summer, he would go on to compete with Germany in the UEFA Euro Championships. In 2016, which is the second to last time that they would play, they would go on to end up as semifinalists in France. Once they would go on to make it through once they would make it through knockout stages, Germany would go on to beat Slovakia 3-0 in the first round as Manuel Neuer had held a clean sheet. In the quarterfinals, Germany would end up drawing with Italy, but making it through on penalties. So, of course, Neuer had to be very big as he saved the last kick for Italy, or against Italy. But then in the semifinals, Germany would end up losing to France, who ended up losing in the final to Portugal. So that would be how Germany's Euros would end. For the second time in a row, they would end up losing in the semifinals after finishing as runners-up in 2008. Those would be Neuer's first 2 appearances in this Euro tournament. But following that Euros championship, he would come back to Bayern for his 6th season and his 11th season in the Bundesliga. In his age 30 season in 2016-2017, Manuel Neuer would start all 26 of the Bundesliga games he played in a season where Bayern Munich would go on to win the Bundesliga for the 5th year in a row at this time. After Manuel Neuer's first season was the year that they finished as runners-up. In the season, he would actually suffer a left foot fracture in the Champions League that would actually end his season very abruptly. He actually injured it in their series versus Real Madrid, and it would actually knock them out of a good amount of games for the season. But looking at how the season would go on to finish for Bayern and how Manuel's season ended up, in the 25 matches he played, he did go on to allow an insane in the 26 matches he played, he only allowed 13 goals. He would go on to finish with 14 clean sheets. This would, of course, be the 5th time in his 6-year stint with Bayern at the time that he would finish with a majority of his games ending in a clean sheet. So, of course, he would, have that going for him. And his 14 clean sheets this season would, of course, make it 11 straight seasons that he played in the Bundesliga that he would record a double-digit amount of clean sheets. That streak would, of course, end this year as his foot woes would, of course, carry into the 2017 season. As while he was hurt in 2017, he would be named the captain for Bayern Munich and for Germany after Philipp Lahm, Germany and Bayern's fullback, would announce his retirement. But he would go on to play the first game of the season after recovering from a foot injury, but he would still go on to play only 3 games before he was officially ruled out for the entire season because he would go on to fracture the same foot. In his 12th season with the team in 2017-18 in his age 31 season, Manuel Neuer only started 3 matchups in a season where Bayern would go on to take the Bundesliga yet again. Not to mention that in 2017-18, they would go on to finish as runners-up in 2017-18, Bayern Munich would finish as runners-up in the DFB Pokal as they would lose to Eintracht Frankfurt 3-1. They would draw in the Super Cup to Dortmund 2-2. Not to mention that in Champions League, Bayern would end up losing to Real Madrid. Real Madrid would advance on aggregates, but that would be sort of a lost season for Neuer. But by the time that he would really come back, he would be back for Germany to compete in the 2018 FIFA World Cup. This was the World Cup that they would come to right after they won. And then just, of course, with the timing and all and Neuer coming back, it would be very tough for Germany in this round. Germany wouldn't even make it out of the group stage of their round in the 2018 World Cup, as they were placed in the exact same group as Sweden, Mexico, and even South Korea. In their first matchup, they lost 1-0 to Mexico. They would end up they would end up beating Sweden 2-1 in the second round. And while they had virtually all of their hopes on the line for this last matchup, they would end up losing 2-0 to South Korea, as South Korea scored 2 goals in extra time in order to help them advance to the knockout stages, as Germany, the defending champs, was knocked out in the knockout stages. That would be the last time that Manuel Neuer has competed with Germany in the World Cup. But Germany is qualified for the World Cup this year, and Manuel Neuer is going to be the starting goalie for Germany in that World Cup. But that would, of course, conclude the 2018 summer, and this would lead into the 2018-2019 season, which would be Manuel Neuer's 8th full season, which would be his 8th season with the team, and in his 7th full season as the starting goalie. He would go on to start all 26 Bundesliga matchups in a season where Bayern Munich would go on to win the Bundesliga title for what would be the 7th year in a row. In the Bundesliga itself, he would go on to respectfully finish with 23 goals allowed in the 26 matchups he played. This would be yet another season where he's allowed less goals than match played. He's virtually done it in every single season except for his last season in Schalke when it comes to the Bundesliga. He would also finish with 10 clean sheets, making it so that he would have 12 of his first 13 seasons in the league, finishing with a double-digit amount of clean sheets in the Bundesliga. Also, within that season, he would go on to play 3 DFL Pokal matchups in a season where Bayern Munich would go on to win the Pokal. This would be the 4th time that they've won it since Manuel Neuer has joined the team. Looking at the Pokal, they would go on to beat Leipzig in the final. They would also win the DFL Super Cup as they beat Eintracht Frankfurt 5-0 in that final as well. Taking a look at how Bayern fared in Champions League, they would make it through their group stage before losing to Liverpool in the round of 16. This would be a very strong Liverpool team, as they would go on to make it very far as well. As even in that Champions League season, he only allowed 7 goals in the 8 matchups he played, virtually showing that anybody can get knocked out of Champions League at any time. He also had 4 clean sheets that year as well. Following that 2018-2019 season, Manuel Neuer would, of course, return for what would be his 9th season with the Bayern Munich Football Club. This would be his age 33 season in 2019-2020. And of course, in what would be his 9th season with the Bayern Munich Soccer Club, he would go on to start all 33 Bundesliga games in a season where Bayern Munich would go on to win the Bundesliga for the 8th year in a row. Very tough feat to really kind of replicate in any other league, as they are on their way to at least doing a decade's worth. But especially within the Bundesliga, in the season where we're in his 8th straight Bundesliga championship season, he would go on to allow 31 goals in the 33 matchups that he played, as that would be yet another season with less goals allowed than matches played. He would finish with 15 clean sheets. This, of course, would be the 7th time that Manuel Neuer has logged 15 clean sheets in a Bundesliga season where there's 34 games. He has not logged 15 clean sheets in a Bundesliga season since the 2019-2020 season. But, of course, that should give you an idea of how dominant Bayern Munich was while Manuel Neuer was still in his 30s. In addition to that, they would go on to win the Pokal for the 2nd year in a row, for the 5th time since Neuer had been there. Of course, in those 9 seasons, the majority of the time that he had been there. Also, not to mention, they would go on to, like I said, they would go on to win the Pokal, as this year they would win the domestic cup over Bayer Leverkusen 4-2 in the final. This year, however, they would lose in the Super Cup to Borussia Dortmund this year, but they would go on to, but this was prior to the season starting. They would go on to win Champions League, as this was the season that had to get delayed and short. This is the season that had to get delayed because of COVID, and then it had to get shortened from 2 legs to 1 leg for every single leg. Bayern Munich would go all the way to the final. Along the way, embarrassing Barcelona 8-2 in the quarterfinals, as they would go on to beat Paris Saint-Germain 1-0 in the final, as Kingsley Coman scored the lonely goal for that, as Manuel Neuer was able to hold a clean sheet. Overall in the season, Neuer, in addition to having his 15 clean sheets in the Bundesliga, on Bayern Munich's way to winning the Pokal, he would allow 5 goals in the 6 matches that he played, as he had a clean sheet. In the Champions League road to the final, he would allow 8 goals in the 11 matches he played, as he had 6 clean sheets, including the final. They would also go on to win the UEFA Super Cup, and they would go on to win the FIFA Club World Cup too, as this would be the second time that Manuel Neuer has won the treble and has gone on to win virtually every trophy you can really win with Bayern. So, of course, congratulations to him for even doing it multiple times while winning a World Cup. This, of course, would transition into the last full season that Manuel Neuer has played. His age 34 season in 2020-2021. This would go down as his 15th season in the Bundesliga and his 10th season with the Bayern Munich Soccer Club. In the Bundesliga, he would start all 33 of the matches he played in a season where Bayern Munich would win the Bundesliga for the 19th year in a row. For the 9th year in a row. That would be the only trophy, at least within Germany, that they would pick up. As not to mention that in 2020, 2021, they would, of course, go on to, take the German Super Cup. They were able to do that. But other than that, the trophy that Bayern Munich was able to take in 2021 was the Bundesliga's. In the Bundesliga season, Manuel Neuer would allow 42 goals in the 33 matches he played. It will be the very first time since his last season in Schalke that he allowed less goals than matches played within a domestic season. He even finished with 9 clean sheets. This would be the first full season that he had where he didn't record a double-digit amount of clean sheets in the Bundesliga. In his first 15 years, the only time that he didn't have a double-digit outside of that was when he only played 3 games in the season where he got injured. So his last full season was a bit of an outlier season for Manuel Neuer. But taking a look at how he was able to fare outside of the Bundesliga in the Pokal, he only played 1 matchup, as Bayern Munich ended up losing in the second round of the Pokal to Holstein Kiel in a matchup that ended up kind of really embarrassing him. They did go on to beat Dortmund for the Super Cup for that win, but looking at how they fared in Champions League, Bayern Munich would end up losing in the quarterfinals to PSG, the team they beat in the championship the year before, only off of away goals, as Robert Lewandowski ended up getting hurt in a very crucial part of the season. But of course, following that season where they would go on to win the Bundesliga title, Manuel Neuer would go on to compete with Germany at the 2020 Euros that were played a year later because of COVID. And in the 2020 Euros, Germany would actually end up making it out of their group. As looking at their group, they were able to, of course, play pretty well, as their group would feature France and Portugal. France and Portugal were the teams that made it out with them. They would lose to France in the first matchup. They beat Portugal 4-2, and then they drew with Hungary 2-2 in the last game to make it into the knockout stage. In the round of 16, however, they would lose to England 2-0, as England would go all the way to the final just to lose on penalties to Italy. But that, of course, leads us to that was the last time that Neuer had played in an international tournament, as it looks as though he is going to play with Germany in this upcoming World Cup, as Germany has already qualified for this upcoming World Cup. But regardless, it leads us into this current season as it precludes the 2022 World Cup, where I do not know what's going to happen as of right now. So far this season, he started all 22 of the matches he's played for a Bayern Munich team that is actually sitting right on top of the Bundesliga. Taking a look at where they're sitting 6 points ahead of second place Borussia Dortmund, as Bayern has 7 more games in their schedule. So it's relatively close, but Bayern still has yet to play Dortmund for the second time. But right now they're sitting there. And taking a look at where they're faring on the international stage, Bayern Munich is still competing in the Champions League. They are one of the 8 teams that made it to the quarterfinal, as their next matchup will be against Villarreal. They will play at Villarreal on April 6th, and then, of course, they will host Villarreal on April 12th. That's weeks out from today. But of course, taking a look at what he's done so far within the Bundesliga in the 22 matchups, he's allowed 20 goals. And so far, he has 8 clean sheets this year. He's looking to have a double-digit amount of clean sheets this year to kind of turn back his season, to turn back around so that his season is a lot better than last year's. But of course, it continues to show us that Manuel Neuer is consistently one of the best soccer players to ever play the sport. I do think that last year was just a tough season, a rough season for him, even though he was able to win the trophy. I still think that as of this day, as of Sunday, March 27, 2022, Manuel Neuer might be one of the most important players at that Bayern Munich, one of the best clubs in the world, and that Germany, one of the most dominant soccer nations in the world, will always have. And I think that when it's all said and done, Manuel Neuer will probably have his own street, his own day. He is a German hero. It's just a matter of waiting to see when he hangs up the cleats. But as of right now, he's still one of the best in the world, if not the best goalkeeper in the world. And with that said, I want to, of course, thank the Pro Football Reference websites, the FIFA websites, the Bundesliga, and Wikipedia articles for giving me all the facts and figures. I also want to thank everybody for listening to all 40 minutes of this piece, as Neuer's career gets longer, so will these episodes. Once all of today's episodes and matchups are done, exhibitions and matchups are done, I'm going to come back tomorrow on Monday, March 28th. And until then, I want to thank everyone once again. I hope all is well. And if you ever get a chance to watch Manuel Neuer, he wears number 1 for Germany and he wears number 1 for Bayern. So thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with more tomorrow. Peace out.